वेलकम टू हिस्ट्री एपिसोड ऑफ रिएक्शन गुरु। खटमंडू क्यों कैपिटल है नेपाल का, तो ये डॉक्यूमेंट्री है, इसको हम देखेंगे और जानेंगे हिस्ट्री ऑफ नेपाल कि इसको खटमंडू को कैपिटल आखिर क्यों बनाया गया। तो हमारे साथ जुड़े रहिए, शुरू करते हैं वीडियो।
This is Gorkha, a small municipality in Nepal. According to the 2011 census, it had a population of 50,000.
50,000 की।
This is Kathmandu. It is the capital city of Nepal. In 2011, it had a population of 1 million. Just from the aerial images of these two places, we can see a lot of difference between the two. Compared to Gorkha, Kathmandu is packed with concrete buildings, roads and people. Satellite images show Kathmandu as a blot of grey surrounded by green. Gorkha, on the other hand, has hardly any grey spots, a testament to how little infrastructure has been built here. Now, obviously, one is the capital of our country, while the other seems like it's barely even a town. But Gorkha was once the starting point of a unification campaign that would give rise to the modern-day Nepal, a campaign that would unite numerous fractured kingdoms into a country that could resist the British Empire. The reason Kathmandu is the capital of Nepal is intertwined with the story of how this small kingdom rose to be able to withstand a global superpower. And this story starts with this man. This is Prithvinarayan Shah, the first king of the Kingdom of Nepal, but before he was the king of Nepal, he was but a ruler of this small town of Gorkha, which was then known as the Kingdom of Gorkha. In 1743 AD, he set out on a campaign to unify small kingdoms around Gorkha. He started with Nuwakot, Kirtipur, Makwanpur and Chokod. But when he reached Kathmandu, he did something strange. He decided to proclaim himself as a monarch of the Kingdom of Nepal, centralize this region for future conquest and not his own Kingdom of Gorkha. More than 250 years later, the Shahs no longer rule Nepal. Today, it is a federally parted and democratically ruled republic, but Kathmandu still remains Nepal's capital. The city has seen unprecedented growth over the years and remains the most infrastructurally developed city in the whole country, while Gorkha has receded to a footnote in history. This really made me curious. What was so special about this city that it compelled Prithvinarayan Shah to choose Kathmandu to be the capital of his country over his
जानना बड़ा
birthland of Gorkha?
जरूरी होगा हमारे लिए भी।
Infrastructure and
The reasons why any city is chosen to be the capital is generally a mixture of political, infrastructural, economical, and historical compromise. London became the capital of the English dynasties as administrative buildings were built in the area which lay at a favorable point in the River Thames, with prior infrastructure having been built by the Romans centuries before. For the conquering Shah dynasty, the choice between a relatively sparsely populated land such as Gorkha and the verdant, naturally defensible, and strategically central land of Kathmandu Valley was an obvious one.
पहले से ही सेंट्रल लैंड थी।
Even before the conquest under the Shah dynasty, Kathmandu Valley was home to the Newars and the dynasty of Mullah kings and was called by foreigners as Nepal, Sanskritized word for Newa, which is what the inhabitants call themselves. Far from its current borders, medieval Nepal occupied much less territory in every direction than its early modern and modern counterparts.
ये खटमंडू पूरा सिटी।
The origins of this state prior to the Mullah kings and the Lichavis are shrouded in mystery. The only records we have of during that period is in the Vamsavali, which are chronicles that tell of the valley being a lake which was drained by either the Hindu god Krishna or Bodhisattva Manjusri by opening a gorge to drain the water and allowing for settlements of the fertile alluvial plains. The Vamsavali cannot strictly be considered as a historical source because of its mixture of historical and mythological storytelling, but its text does hint towards the first ruling class of the valley being the Mahispals and Gopals, who were buffalo and cow herders. After the Mahispals and Gopals, the Kirans came into the valley. Documentation of these Kirans can be found even in the great epics of Mahabharata. John Cabral was a Jesuit priest and one of the first European travelers who came to Nepal in the 1600s. In accounts of his travel to Nepal, we can find the geographical importance of Nepal in connecting the Indian subcontinent to China. Cabral wanted to travel to China to spread Christianity, and on finding the route to Tibet via Nepal, he called it the gateway to the whole of Taradi, China, and many other pagan countries. His accounts also mention that the road through Nepal was perfectly safe and was used by many travelers. Accounts from Chinese travelers such as monk Fa Xing and monk Zhu Zhang during the Jintang dynasty also provide evidence of a continuous Nepali identity for the valley inhabitants from early periods. But why did this region turn into such a hotspot for settlers? Well, Kathmandu lies on an ancient lake basin. Historians propose that this is the same lake mentioned in the Manjushri mythos. The remnants of an ancient lake is the reason Kathmandu has a large fertile plain for sustaining a booming population. Besides the obvious benefits of good soil and relatively regular
Interesting, right?
rivers, the valley lies in an important transit point between the two historically rich regions of the Indian subcontinent and the Chinese heartlands. The wealth of Kathmandu flowed from its commercial enterprise and tradesmen that worked between the two regions. Nepali
यहाँ
work
से
and
वहाँ
craftsmen were prized, notably in the 13th century AD, as evidenced by the emergence in the Yuan Chinese codes of the artist and architect Oraniko. Trade in the copper works, idols, and statues flowed from chiefly the Kathmandu Valley, whose artisans and specialized workers were stratified in a caste system by the Mulla dynasty. The chief influential factor in the artwork and constructions of the people was the Buddhist influence. The valley was, during both the Lichavi and successively Mulla dynasty, a place where the wealth of the region was pooled and thrown into works of both public welfare and splendor. Sociocultural wealth for the city can be seen in the complexity of the artwork and architecture for the time periods, and the structures of that time that are still standing till date, although in repaired or reconstructed state.
ये तो भाई
Works on
बहुत
temples
पुरानी
and
इनकी
public water
हिस्ट्री है, हम
amenities such
जो
as
सोचते हैं
springs
उससे भी
help
ज़्यादा.
provide the urban texture of Kathmandu that is still viewable today. The old name for one of the cities of the valley, Kathmandu proper or Kashtamandav, comes from one of these public amenities, literally translating into wood-covered shelter. The 3 stories public shelter that was situated in Maru Kathmandu was a building made entirely of woodwork in the pagoda style, which was destroyed during the 2015 earthquake of Nepal and is currently under reconstruction. All this points towards the valley being a flourishing city with art, culture, impressive infrastructure long before unification under Prithvinarayan Shah. Throughout history, capitals are situated for varying reasons. Rome is a cultural heartland for the Italian people. London was the largest and most prosperous city in the British Isles when it became the capital of the English monarchs, and many other nations share important historical reasons for the situation of their capitals. For the unification of Nepal, at that time, the wealth and prosperity of the Kathmandu Valley, along with its pre-existing infrastructure and its defensibility, may be some of the reasons why it eventually became the capital. Without a doubt, the unification and successive modernization of the state of Nepal led to the deeper roots of centralization we see in the nation today. Though the recent adoption of federalism has in principle sought to change this, in practice a large contingent of the urbanized and wealthy classes, along with a disproportionate amount of infrastructure and resources, are still in Kathmandu. As such, people from all over the nation come to find employment and opportunities in the city. The valley, like it has ever been, is still a melting pot of cultures and travelers from every reach of the Himalayas. The valley is still mythologized to a certain degree as a haven for opportunities and monetary mobility, with people flocking in from east and west. This mixing of people and cultures have sometimes led to disputes between the native Newars and the people who have immigrated to the city about whom Kathmandu belongs to. But when the very city was built not by a single ethnic group, but by centuries of mixing of different cultures, would it not be right to say that it belongs to all of us? We would like to thank senior historian Mr. Mahesh Raj.
वंडरफुल रिसर्च वर्क भाई, इतना मेहनत से ये वीडियो बनाया गया है. सबसे पहले तो आप जाके इनके चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें. हम जो खटमंडू के बारे में जानते हैं, ये खटमंडू से बहुत ज़्यादा पुराना है और बहुत ज़्यादा रिच हिस्ट्री में है. हम तो ये समझ रहे थे कि यार ये जब किंगडम ऑफ नेपाल बना उसके बाद ये खटमंडू यहाँ पे कैपिटल इन्होंने बनाया, लेकिन उससे पहले भी ये एक कहते मेन सिटी था जो कि कनेक्ट करता था 2 सब कॉन्टिनेंट के और
इंडिया और पूरा
ट्रेड रूट भी था इससे, और वैसे भी कनेक्टिविटी के लिए ये मेन. और तब से इसके डिफरेंट उन्होंने बताया कि कौन कौन सी डायनेस्टीज आके यहाँ पे उनका किंगडम था. तो ये एक बहुत ही पुराना एक शहर है और बहुत ही रिच कल्चर है और रिच हिस्ट्री है. और वे टाइम टू टाइम डिफरेंट किस्म के लोग इसमें आते गए, सेटल होते गए और अपना उस रंग में रंगते गए और खटमंडू को भी रंगते गए. और
ये मॉडर्न आज बन गया इसी तरह का हमारा थोड़ा सा सिटी है एबटाबाद का, लेकिन वो इतना ज़्यादा इस तरह नहीं है, पॉपुलेटेड भी और सारा स्ट्रक्चर भी उसका, लेकिन वो भी इसी तरह है. लेकिन ये इस वजह से आई थिंक बना है क्योंकि इनके पास सबसे ज़्यादा फर्टिलाइजिंग वाली लैंड यहीं पर थी. पूरा एग्रीकल्चर की लैंड यहीं पर था इनके पास, इसलिए पूरे पूरे यहाँ से दूर दूर से लोग आके यहाँ
और
बसना शुरू हो
मजे
गए।
की बात ये है कि ये पहले लैंड लेक था, लेक की वजह से फिर ये एरिया इतना फर्टाइल बना। तो ये भी एक इंटरेस्टिंग इन्फॉर्मेशन थी, क्योंकि हमें पिछले सालों का तो नहीं पता होता कि सदियों पहले क्या था या 100 सालों पहले क्या था कि 500 साल पहले। तो वो एक हिस्ट्री फिर पता चलती है तो फिर बड़ा अच्छा लगता है। तो ये भी बड़ा एक
इस कॉन्टिनेंट में आएगा सबसे ज़्यादा जो रिच और पुराना है वो इन्हीं का ही है, क्योंकि हमारा भी हमें पता है कि बाद में बना था, हमारे कंट्री के बाद ही। और इंडिया का भी बाद में बनाया गया था। तो लेकिन ये बहुत पुराना है, तो इसलिए हमें मज़ा आया देखकर थोड़ा डॉक्यूमेंट्री का। होपफुली आपको भी मज़ा आया होगा। ओरिजिनल लिंक मिलेगा आपको, ज़रूर चेकआउट करें। फिर आज के लिए इतना ही, मिलते हैं आपको नेक्स्ट वीडियो में। टेक केयर है, अल्लाह हाफिज़।